How Beowulf Delivered Heorot, retold from the Old English epic Beowulf, from the My Book House series of books, the volume titled From the Tower Window. Lo, we have heard tell of the might in days of old of the Danish folk kings, how deeds of daring were done by their Scyldings. To Hrothgar, beloved folk king of the Scyldings, was given such glory of war that gladly his kinfolk obeyed him, and great grew his gathering of warriors. Then blithely it burned in his spirit to bid men build him a dwelling, greater than children of men had ever heard tell of, and there within it to share with young and with old the good things God gave him. To all the king's kinsmen far and wide through the mid-earth was given the task of making fair the folk hall. Speedily it befell that it was in every wise ready, the greatest of hall houses, and Hrothgar hailed it by name Heorot, the stag. High on a hill rose the hall, broad-gabled and builded of timber. Gold bright and glittering its roof, carven and painted its pillars, with antlers of stags bedecked. Then Hrothgar belied not his pledge. When first there was feasting, he gave to his kinsfolk and clansmen collars of gold, with richly wrought rings and treasures at table. Each day did the din of the revel resound. High in the hall rang the harps, clear sounded song of the gleemen. So dwelt the warriors in wassail, till that foul fiend and foe to mankind, Grendel, the grim and the greedy, he who went prowling the borders, a roamer, lonely and terrible, heard their rejoicings with envy. This dark demon, huger than human bulk, who yet in the shape of a man trod the track of exile, haunted the misty moorlands, the fastnesses and fens. At nightfall Grendel fared forth to find the haughty hall-house, and heed how the ringdanes had left it. There found he 30 Scyldings asleep and fearless of sorrow. Unhallowed wight, grim and greedy, he slew betimes, fierce and pitiless, all those 30 thanes. Then home, exulting in evil, laden with slaughter, he stalked. At daybreak came Hrothgar's henchman, Heorot, to cleanse. There, lo, the mead hall stood empty of Scyldings, benchboards o'erturned, and signs of a struggle. Sorrow of soul was theirs, and mood of mourning. The king himself labored in woe for loss of his lordly Scyldings. Gigantic footsteps they found, and far to a lone mountain tarn they traced the trail of the foe, yet no longer than after one night. Grendel again returning wrought ruthless murder more grievous. Too old to meet Grendel was Hrothgar, but oft as his beer they drank, boasted his warsmen to bide in the beer hall and meet this grim Grendel with sword blades. Then was the mead house at morn dyed with blood. Hrothgar had heroes the less, doughty dear ones that death had reft. At last all the Scyldings feared to sleep in the hall of horrors. They sought rest in buildings apart. Empty and idle the mead hall as soon as the evening sun in the harbor of heaven was hid. Thus had Grendel mastery, and warred against the right, he alone against all. A great while it was, 12 winters, that the king endured this woe. The evil one ambushed young and old, dark death shadow dogging his prey, luring them, lurking the livelong night in mists of the moorland. O'er Heorot he lorded, gold bright hall. In gloomy nights, and ne'er could the king approach his throne or have joy in his hall. Many warsmen assembled, sought counsel how bold-hearted men this horror could help. The whiles they vowed altar offerings within their heathen fanes. Yet still, without ceasing, Hrothgar brooded his season of sorrow, sad and despairing of succor. And now began gleemen to sing the sorrowful song abroad, how Grendel strove against Hrothgar. So it befell that Beowulf, born a thane of the Geatfolk, heard tell of this tale of terror. Strongest in might of manhood in that same day, and of this our life, stalwart and stately was Beowulf, having in his hand grip 30 men's heft of grasp. For high-hearted valor, Beowulf donned his war deeds, ancient and mystic armor, woven work of Wayland, weaponsmith to the gods. And he bade befitted a good sea-goer, that he might fare over the swan road, over the sea streets, Hrothgar to help in his horror. Picked warriors of the Geatfolk, the boldest Beowulf chose, and sped by the wind, their bark like a bird with breast of foam glided over the waters. At sunrise the seafarers saw the shore cliffs gleaming before them. They sprang to the beach and thanked God for their passage in peace o'er the whale path. Now saw from the cliff the warden that watched the waterside, how they bore over the gangway glittering shields and war gear, and how the golden boars gleamed grimly on their helmets. Wonder seized him to know what manner of men they were. "Who are ye in battle gear?" he cried, "leading a deep ship hither?" Beowulf made answer, "To Hrothgar I would bring succor, that his boiling care-waves may cool." So the warden guided the Geatfolk till Heorot they saw, broad of gable and bright with gold, the hall that was among earth-dwellers famed beyond all halls under heaven. The sheen of it flashed afar. Stone bright the street led on, showing the way to the clansmen. Then hied that troop where the herald led them under Heorot's roof. The hero strode, hardy 'neath helm, to the hearth in the midst of the hall. On the high seat, white-haired and old, surrounded by earls, sat Hrothgar, and unto Hrothgar, Beowulf, unrestrained, now unlocked his word hoard. "O Prince of the bright Danes, guardian of warriors, beloved friend of the people, I beg to destroy this demon. His charms render weapons powerless. No sword will I use against him. With hand grip alone grasp I Grendel." "Sore is my soul," said Hrothgar, "to say to any of the race of man what wroth me in Heorot, Grendel, with hate hath wrought. What sudden harryings! Hallfolk fail, my warriors wane, but God is able this deadly foe from his deeds to turn. Now sit to the banquet. I beg thee, unbind thy words, hardy hero, as heart shall prompt thee." Then Geatish men gathered together, their benches and trestle tables running the length of both walls, while haughty at the end of the hall Hrothgar sat on his high seat, and opposite Hrothgar, Beowulf. A henchman with carven cup poured out the shining mead, and oft the minstrels sang blithe. In Heorot, heroes revelled with laughter in liegemen loud. Came Wealhtheow, queen of Hrothgar, gold-decked, greeting the guests, handing to all the mead cup, till came the moment when ring-graced she bore the beaker to Beowulf. Greeting the Lord of the Gates, God she thanked that here was a hero on whom her hope could lean. The cup he took, hardy in war, and thus answered, eager for combat. "Either I will do deeds that free your people wholly, or fighting fall to the foe, fast in the fist of the fiend." Pleased with the battle boast, the stately dame, bright with gold, sat down by her spouse on the high seat. Again the proud bands revelled, but Hrothgar knew well that the fiend purposed fight when the sheen of the sun should vanish, when dusk of the night sank darkling, and shadowy shapes came striding, stalking neath the sky. So Hrothgar led forth his hero train, and Beowulf, with his battle braves, bided alone in the place. Bearing bench boards of trenchers and mead cups, spreading bolsters and beds on the benches, each atheling hung over his head his helmet, corselet, and spear. For so 'twas the custom of heroes to sleep in the hall of wassail. Spake then his vaunt, bold Beowulf, with hand grip alone grasp I Grendel, and let the wise God decree doom on which side he deemeth right. Brave for battle he mounted his bed, while his men on their hall beds sank. None of them thought that thence their steps to the folk that fostered them to the land they loved would lead back. Well they wist that on warriors many would battle death seize that night. Through was night, came striding the stalker in shadow. From moorland by misty crags, with God's wrath laden, came Grendel. Under the clouds he came, till the mead hall, the gold hall he saw, gleaming and flashing with fretwork. The portal he found fast bolted. Baleful in blatant rage, he burst the house's mouth. O'er the fair paved floor he trod on, ireful, his eyes flashing flame. He spied in the hall the heroes, kin and clansmen clustered asleep. Then his heart laughed for joy of the banquet lying in wait to his will. A sleeping warrior he seized and tore him fiercely asunder. For Beowulf, hardly hero, with fiendish claw he grasped. But the hero reclining was watching. He clutched the fiend's claw boldly, soon saw that shepherd of evils, that never he met in this mid-world, in all the ways of earth, a wight with heavier hand-grip. Fain would he flee, his fastness seek, the den of devils. But Beowulf grasped him firm, nor could the fiend free his fist. Din filled the room. There crashed from the sill many mead benches. Wonder it was that the wine hall stood firm in the strain of their struggle. Danes, filled with fear and frenzy, heard Grendel wailing his outcry. God's foe, sounding stave of terror, his grisly song of defeat. Now Beowulf's earls, awakening, brandished blades to shield their lord. But no keenest blade ever fashioned could hurt that hideous fiend. Him Beowulf held with his hand, till Grendel took mortal hurt. A mighty wound showed on his shoulder, sinews cracked. The bone frame burst, and Beowulf dragged from the socket shoulder, arm, and claw. Thence Grendel, death-sick, his den in the dark moor sought, knowing well that here was the last of life, an end of his days on earth. To eastern Danes had the valiant Geat his vaunt made good. As proof he hung Grendel's claw beneath the roof of Heorot. Many at morning the men who gathered the wonder to witness, folk leaders faring from far and near the tracks of the foe did trace, how, worsted in fight, he fled to die in the mare of the monsters. Then home rode the hoary clansmen, while youths set their white steeds to race whenever the road seemed fair. And from time to time a thane of the king, mindful of ancient sagas, bound word to word in well-knit rhyme, welding songs of Beowulf's glory. The king and the queen with her maidens measured the path to the mead house. Hrothgar stood by the steps and saw Grendel's claw neath the roof. God still works wonder on wonder, the warden of glory, he cried. Then was hurry and haste in Heorot, for hands to bedeck it, and dense was the throng of men and women the wine hall to cleanse. Gold gay shone the woven hangings that garnished the walls. To hall then proceeded Beowulf. The king himself sat to the banquet. To Beowulf, Hrothgar gave a banner woven of gold, a breastplate, a helmet, and sword. Then he bade lead adown the hall 8 steeds with carven headgear, whereof one was duly decked with splendid jewelled saddle, the battle seat of the best of kings, when in his younger days he fared forth to the sword-play. To Geatish earls too he gave gifts, and the queen undercrown gold. Wealhtheow, with winsome words and with gifts likewise regarded Beowulf. That was the proudest of feasts. Harping was heard with the hero lay, as Hrothgar's singers woke hall joy all along the mead seats. But when the evening was come, homeward Hrothgar did hasten, royal to his rest. Beowulf too left the hall, bound for a bed apart. The earls left to guard the mead hall, spread their beds on the benches, and sank secure to their slumber, deeming all danger was done. But since that grim fight, Grendel's mother, a monster wife, mourned her woe, dwelling in dark, dreary waters. Gloomy and grim, she came on a quest her son to avenge. Into the hall house she burst, the mother of Grendel. He who Hrothgar of heroes was dearest, she killed on his couch. Uproar filled Heorot. Grendel's arm she tore down and fled in haste to the moorlands. For Hrothgar a steed was saddled, a steed with plaited mane. Then Hrothgar bade Beowulf come and with him seek out Grendel's mother. They followed the monster's footprints over the murky moors. They followed o'er beetling cliffs, fearful fenways, and narrow passes, sheer headlands and haunts of the knee-course. So they came to a mountain forest, dank and foul, the woeful wood, and beneath it black, boiling waters, waters dyed with blood, and wonder weird to see, fearful fire on the waters. And there crawled worm-like things, sea dragons and savage knee-course, such as oft on the road of sails pursue ruthless quest of sailors. Then Beowulf leapt in the flood. An hour of the day fled by, and many a monster he met, sea beasts swarming upon him, tearing his mail with fierce tusks, ere he fell to the floor of the sea. Then, lo, a great claw grasped him, and dragged him down to a fearsome hall, whither no water entered. There Beowulf faced Grendel's mother, wolf of the deep, mare-wife monstrous. His good blade he swung for a blow. On her head sang its war-song wild, but useless was Beowulf's sword against charms of the she-one. He cast it aside, strong and steel-edged, and trusted once more to his hand-grip. With grisly grasp, Grendel's mother grappled with Beowulf, till spent with struggle, the fighter on foot, strongest of warriors, stumbled. The water-wife hurled herself on him, her dagger drew, broad and bright-edged. So had life ended for Beowulf, had not holy God, the wise Lord, held sway over the victory, awarding it a right. Midst the war gear on the cave's walls, Beowulf saw of a sudden an old sword of the giants, glory of warriors and choicest of weapons, save greater than any man else might think to bear to the battle. Beowulf seized it, and, battle grim, smiting, slew Grendel's mother. Steadfast of thought, the hero looked through the undersea cave hall, and finding where Grendel lay dead, he bore off his head to Hrothgar. Then up through the waters he dove. Safely he swam to the land. Hrothgar had gone home to Heorot. But Beowulf's chosen band had long sat, sick at heart, watching the sad sea surges, fearful for his returning. God they thanked to see him again. Then forth they fared by the footpath, forbearing Grendel's head. So to the palace they came. Said Beowulf, Lord of the Scyldings, sleep safely henceforth in Heorot. Joyful of heart was Hrothgar. He gave treasures 12 to the hero, while all men averred that from sea to sea there was none under vault of heaven more valiant than Beowulf. Their ocean keel boarding, the great men dove again through the deep, and foam-flecked their vessel floated, till they sighted the cliffs of home.